All right, hello everyone. My name is Gray. A lot of y'all have probably been following along some of the stuff that I've been doing with 3D printing, and today I wanted to show a little bit about how I actually go about making a body. This video is pretty much going to cover everything from start to finish once the scan has actually been done. So before I start this video, we'll let you know this is a voiceover. I did this the other night while I was sitting on the couch. I had kids running everywhere, so couldn't really record audio at the time. But I scanned in a pheasant body, which is what you're seeing on the screen right now. And now we're going to go through the process I use of making the body. Obviously, we've imported it into the program, and so now what we're going to do is get it aligned to the origin or the center point, and this is going to be very important. One of the first things I do. So right now I'm getting everything lined up. Now if you look in the top right corner, you'll see the compass, which is red, green, and blue for the X, Y, and Z axis. Now, I like to mostly work from the left side of the bird, and I align that point on the Y negative side. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just getting everything aligned. And there's a reason for this, because what we're going to do is I typically pick the side that I like the most, and then I will end up mirroring that side and creating a symmetrical body from it. As you can see, I left the humerus bone on this body. I did not freeze it. I took a fresh carcass and then scanned it in. I wired the wing bone up so that it would kind of stick out in place, and then scan the body. So what I'm trying to do is get that body completely centered up along the center line of the origin, so that when I go to mirror, it will mirror properly. So this is really just a lot of kind of playing back and forth, using your eye, and just checking it out, making sure it looks right. Usually I'll go through a couple rounds where I will get it to where I think it's right, and then I don't like it, so I'll Control Z, undo it, go back, make changes, and then try it again. Now with this program, and this program is Blender, it's a free open source. You don't have to pay anything for it. There's no hidden fees, no add-ons you have to pay for. The program is 100% open sourced and free. And it's a pretty good program. There's tons of videos out there showing you how to use it, although not most of the stuff that's out there doesn't really apply to what we're doing here. But one thing you will need to note when you're doing this and you're reorienting your body, Blender does not fully recognize what you're doing until you apply the changes that you've made. And you'll see me do that soon. Basically all these rotations and whatnot, there it is right there. So I go to Object, Apply, All Transforms, and now the body is the program recognizes that I have made the changes, which is important when you go to mirror an object. It will not properly mirror the object until all the changes that you have made have been applied. So you'll see me do that fairly frequently. And then in order to mirror it, there's a couple ways you can do it. I find the easiest, fastest way is just to go into sculpt mode. Click there, go to symmetrize. I go -Y to +Y. and then symmetrize. And then I'll play with it, and I'll Control Z, Shift Control Z back and forth to see if I feel the body aligned properly. And this one I feel like it's still a little bit off. You'll notice that the upper back portion there kind of shrinks whenever I mirror it. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to make a couple changes real quick. And then I'll apply those changes. And since all I did was move it over, I'll just apply the location instead of everything. And then we'll mirror it again, symmetrize it. And that looks a little better. Check it out. Yeah. That looks a lot better. I'm happy with that. So if you'll notice in that top right corner, the little Y is highlighted in blue. That is not automatically highlighted. You want to go ahead and turn that on, because that turns on active mirroring, so that any changes you make will be applied to both sides. And from here, most everything we do is going to be in sculpt mode. There's a lot of different brushes, and some of them can be kind of imposing because you have no idea what any of them do. For the most part, when we're doing body work, it's all the same. It's like 4 or 5 brushes that you use the most. Smooth is probably the #1 brush you'll use. It just smooths things out, as you can see here. Crease and draw sharp are 2 more brushes that I use a lot. And that helps create lines, cut into details, stuff like that. And then elastic grab and grab. Probably that's the 5 brushes I use more than anything else. And so I'm just going along and I'm just starting to smooth everything out. Make it a little easier to kind of see what's going on and start figuring out exactly how I want to shape this body. Now, some of y'all might be wondering why I left the wings on, or the humerus bones, and the reason I did that is because once you cut those off, a lot of that meat will sag, that muscle will sag. And this is actually the first time I've tried it, and I liked it a lot. But I left them on specifically so that the muscle structure around the humerus bone would not sag. I could cut out what I wanted to, basically making it's more work but less work, because I'm not having to replace muscle. I'm just having to cut muscle out. Because in reality, I want to leave the body as natural as possible, and only having to make a few changes as far as restoring things like blood pressure, kind of inflating the muscle structure a little more and stuff like that, smoothing out divots and whatnot. I don't want to have to make a whole bunch of actual anatomical changes where possible. So here you're seeing me use the elastic grab brush, which is a fantastic brush. It will grab onto a point and kind of pull everything around it like a rubber band or something. Very useful brush. I use it all the time in all the sculpting that I do. It's the main brush that I use to actually change shapes. Now this particular body, I kind of want to really aim for a flying body. And so we'll cut a few things out that we wouldn't on a standing body. and then we'll leave some stuff in place that we would normally cut out on a standing body. You'll probably notice my ADHD kicking in a lot here as I bounce all over the form. I don't stick to one particular place, and that is actually kind of a good thing in Blender. You want to go kind of step by step. You don't want to do too much in one area at one time, as the model can get kind of hard to work with if you try to do too much in one spot at once. And the reason for that is how a computer understands modeling, which is basically through the use of vertices, edges, and faces. In the combination of these creates what's known as polygons, and the more polygons you have in a model, the harder it is on your graphics card. So you want to work with as few polygons as possible, and then if you need more, you can step up from there. So a lot of times you'll just do a little bit of work, and then you might remesh it and get a few more polygons in there, and then do some more work and then remesh it again. Just depends on what you're working with. With bodies, you don't have to worry about going into high poly counts too much. Here, what I'm doing is just kind of an easy way to cut some of this stuff out. I've gone into edit mode, and then I turned on the X-ray, which basically allows me to select through vertices and faces to whatever's on the back side of it, so that I can quickly cut the rest of that humerus bone out. And this will just make things easier when I start hollowing the humerus area out. So now you can see I have this gaping hole in the body, and so I need to fill that. And so what I'm going to do is, while in edit mode, I'll start selecting vertices. I hold control and I move around the edge of the hole, highlighting vertices along the way. And when you do this, it selects the shortest point between the two vertices. But once I have it a complete loop, then I'll fill it in. And I do that using the FN plus F buttons. There's also, you can I can't remember how to do it other than that. Now you'll see I remeshed it, and all of a sudden it looked weird. That means my remesh size was too small, so I upped it to 0.4 from 0.1, and now it remeshes well. So now it's remeshed, which you want to do whenever you fill in something, because all it does is replace it with an ingon, not a polygon, so there's no depth to the face. Remeshing will allow you to get depth to that, so that then you can go in and start to actually edit it. Now what you're seeing me do, I'm taking the mask brush, which is just, you can short key the letter M as in Mike, and then you can paint an area off. And anything that's in the dark area, whenever you go to edit something with a sculpt brush, it will not affect anything in the dark area. Now what you're seeing me do here is I'm actually going to do this because I'm just going to invert the mask once I'm done. So you can just press A and then switch over to invert mask, and now I can edit this area all I want without affecting the rest of the body. So I'm just going to pull this in so that I can start creating a cavity for my shoulder blade to sit in. And you'll notice here that the mesh is starting to look really weird from me pulling in like that a lot, so I'm going to remesh it, which basically, the remeshing recalculates the polygons. It reorganizes the structure of the mesh, essentially, which then allows me to go in and make changes a little easier. So we'll just keep working around, smoothing, grab, pull, smooth, grab, pull, smooth, just a whole bunch of, usually the same 2 to 3 brushes over and over and over again. Here I'm using the crease brush. I just want to kind of accentuate the muscle structure along the back and kind of outline, you know, where the humerus would usually sit if it was a standing bird or something. And I'm just going to work around. And some of this is just detailing, some of it is functional. We just kind of go through and just work the body a little bit at a time. Now here you're seeing me use the inflate deflate brush. I typically deflate a lot more than I inflate. There's 2 ways that you can do that. Most of the brushes in Blender have 2 functions. They have a positive and a negative. Either it adds to or it takes away from. So inflate, the opposite of, is deflate. And a lot of times I'll use deflate if I want to push a mesh down in an area not too aggressively. Whereas if I use something like draw sharp, it'll really change the mesh. Here I just want to start, I'm really just kind of playing around here, because when I scanned this thing, the body was actually hanging vertically down, and so I also understand here that that means that some muscle structures are going to be in a slightly different place than they would be if they were horizontal, like the neck. And so I'm just trying to figure out the best way to get these back in shape where they should be on a flying bird. Without altering anything more than necessary. And now some of the changes you'll see me make are just because some of it's experience from playing with this program, making bodies, designing bodies, and how I like to shape my bodies, and some of it's just kind of feeling the model and what it wants me to do. But really, it's just a lot of playing around. When you first try this, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. I mean, my gosh, you can mount a bird on a pine cone if you know what you're doing. You don't need a super detailed body. They help, obviously. They can make the job easier and make the job faster, but they don't need to be perfect. And the beauty of it is that if you don't like it or you identify an issue, all you do is pull your Blender file back up and change whatever needs to be changed. And it usually just takes a few minutes. It's not like you've committed to creating a mold and everything just to find out that there's an issue with the body that you made, and then you have to go back and resculpt the form and make a whole new mold. You just save your base file, you save your Blender file, and always make sure you have an original copy of whatever changes you make. So that if you need to go back and say you make a change and you decide, oh, you know what, I don't like that change, you always have your original file to go back to. So now I'm trying to figure out how I want to make my hip cut. I like to use hip attachments, so I'm just trying to figure out how I want to do that. How do I want to cut the hip out, cut all this meat out so that I can create a good hip attachment. And I think at the particular time I was kind of looking to use kind of like a universal body for the pheasants, where I had one that I could put features in for a flying bird or a standing bird, and it's all the same. I decided to go against that, and it just needs to be a flying body. That's another nice thing about this. You make a change, and if you don't like it, you just Control Z, and the changes are gone. So right now, I really just want to kind of get that neck back down in line with the rest of the body. Just trying to figure out the best way to do it. So I'm going to do a combination of bringing the shoulders up and the neck down until I get a shape I like that looks more natural. Now, if I was doing a standing body, that right there is something I would normally do on a standing body, is where I'm kind of outlining where the humerus goes and then kind of wallering out a spot. Then I kind of remembered, oh yeah, this is a flying bird. And I smoothed it back out a little bit. But it's not really going to affect a flying body, so I didn't bother taking it all back out. Working on that gave me some time to kind of think about how I wanted to cut this hip joint out. And I still haven't really figured it out exactly. I've got somewhat of an idea in my head, but I still haven't quite figured it out. So I just start playing with it, drawing some lines, going, you know, is this going to work? Is that going to work? What do I want? How do I want it to look? And whatnot. I decided one thing I do want to do is I want to keep the breast intact, keep those lines intact, and really try to keep the natural shape of the bird the best I can, while still altering it so that it fits the style that I like to use while mounting. Now, my first iteration of a pheasant body doesn't look a whole lot different from this right here, other than I literally just cut a channel out for the leg bones to go into, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that. So I want to go through and do a more updated design. Go ahead and make the split for my tail, place for it to go. Before I come back to the hip joint. Side note real quick, I use a mouse. They've got fancy drawing pens and pads and stuff that you can use with this program, where you basically use a digital pen like a mouse. It's got buttons on it and everything, but you can draw on a pad just like you would with a normal pen and paper or pencil and paper. I just use just a regular old mouse. I'm not fancy or anything like that. Here you can see me kind of stretching that breast back out, giving it some shape again. That's one thing you always want to take into account when you're working on a body, is that when you have a carcass, it's lost all of its blood pressure, it's lost all of its plumpness, and so everything's kind of shrunk down, it's deflated, and you need to reinflate it. And I don't do it a whole lot. I just want to get a good shape to it. Um, you don't need to be pulling it out, a ton. Just a little bit. Kind of inflate a little bit, smooth it out, give it a good shape, and that's all you really need to do. The rest of it will be done when you make your dimensions. When you actually input dimensions as far as the size of the bird is concerned. Which we'll do at the end of the video. I think I'm just kind of skip ahead here a little bit. Working on that tail a little bit, getting it done. As you can see, smooth that out, made a little ledge from a tail. Now we're just kind of doing some final shaping on it. And then eventually we're going to come back to the real conundrum, which is how do I want to cut this leg out for the hip joint. Now here I'm using draw sharp to kind of outline what I think I want to do. Also define that breast muscle where it creases into the body. I think most of y'all will be able to see my ADHD at work here. I can't stay in one spot. I'll be working on one spot and I'll do something and go, oh, you know what? I need to work on that real quick. Just total squirrel moment, and it's all the time. And I could probably do these a lot faster if I didn't bounce all over the place. As you can see, I'm still thinking about how I want to do that. Let's see. Actually, let's go back here. Yeah, so here's where I start stretching everything out some more. I didn't like how the shape was there, so I'm gonna stretch it out a little more. And we're just using elastic grab here, coming along and checking the edges and checking out the shape. Moving along. Just really trying to refine it until it looks good. Alright, so I want to pause it right here real quick. So right here is a modifier that I use quite a bit. You'll see over here on the right, you have a little wrench icon. You can go in on the modifier, add modifier drop down menu, you click generate, and then another pop-up menu will come out and you hit decimate. So what decimate does is you have a face count, which you'll see there. We have 476,952 faces. The higher that number, the harder it is on your graphics card. Ideally, you want to keep any object under 1 million face counts. Anytime it goes over 1 million, depending on your computer, but I'd say the average computer, you want to keep it under 1 million. With a body, you can 100% keep that under 1 million, no problem. But occasionally, if you start working on something and it just starts being real sluggish, especially right after you remesh it, and it starts acting real sluggish, you need to go in and probably need to decimate the mesh. And all it's going to do is basically subdivide your faces and collapse them down. So here you'll see me add a specific value, 0.2, which means I really want to cut it down. So now I only have 160,000 faces. That makes it a little easier to edit. Fewer faces means whenever you're making changes, there's fewer faces being changed. So your brushes can have a more noticeable effect, especially the smooth brush. It'll smooth just a whole lot faster, but it will at the same time change details like those creases and everything that I've made. It'll smooth them right out a lot faster. So it's not always a good thing. Matter of fact, several times you want to work in higher face count meshes while you're adding details, and then decimate it down once you're done. So I've gotten the body smoothed up a lot, and now I'm finally ready to tackle this hip attachment. I've kind of really figured out exactly how I want to do it. So I'm going to mask it off, and then I'll invert the mask when I'm done, so that I'm only affecting that one area. And so here's the thing. The goal of this, I want to remove as much of that hip meat as I can without sacrificing the width of my back. Because, there's a lot, a pheasant's back is pretty wide. And so if you only have a very narrow strip on the back, a lot of your feathers don't have anything to sit on. So we're going to collapse this down, but we want to try to keep as much of that back on there as possible without having crazy overhangs. We can do pretty crazy overhangs with 3D printable stuff. And I need to experiment with that some more, having those overhangs, because it's just, you can have an overhang. You're not molding and casting the product. You can have undercuts and overhangs as deep as you want. Although sometimes when you're printing, that does mean extra supports, and extra supports means extra material and extra time. Now, is it a lot of material? Usually not. So it's not a big deal. But this, I'm just trying to go with something simple. So it's a trade-off. As I want the back as wide as possible, but I want as much room as possible to be able to move those feet around and have freedom to pose the feet in whichever way I want. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my mask, and I'm really going to start lining it out, finding exactly where I want the cuts to be. And I'm just going to try to outline everything. It could go straight down, but I think I ended up not really caring for that. And so right now I'm just kind of playing with it, trying to figure out what I want to do. How can I take away what I need to take away but keep as much of the bird's body as I can. And here you see I'm just deflating, just smoothing everything out, getting it pushed back, trying to get a cutout made. And I decided I really didn't like that. So I'm just going to go all the way back to the beginning. I just Control Z all the way back. And look, never be afraid to do that. If you decide you didn't like something, don't be afraid. So, and that's why I did that. Just in case I went too far and I didn't like the changes I made, I went ahead and made a copy of my body up to that point, set it off to the side, took it out of view, and then came back to the one I was working on so that when I make these changes, if I don't like them, I can just go to the original body and make new changes from there. Because there is a point at which you can't Control Z anymore. You can only go back so many steps. So from here, I'm going to really get to work. Yeah, and this was where I really started to like the cutout. Dropped a little lower on the back to create my undercut. Now I'll mask it off and push all this back. And here you'll see I'm using elastic grab pretty much exclusively to push that material into the mesh and start forming a cutout. Let's see if we can skip along a little more. So now you see I've still got my nice wide back, but now I've got a cutout for my legs, for hip attachment or knee attachment, whichever I want to do, and I'll continue refining the cutout until I like it. And one thing I've found is whenever I make changes, smoothing it out, just kind of smoothing everything out, will help a lot as far as being able to see what it is you want to do. Here I'm inflating this area because I want to keep as much structure around the back of the bird as I can, so I'm not having to use a bunch of fillers to fill it back up. And then I'm taking away, undo that real quick, that was the wrong brush. And I'm taking away from the front where the legs are actually going to be the most. It's a delicate balance. When you take stuff away, you only want to take away as much as you need. That way you get maximum volume in the form, minimum need for fillers. As we all know, fillers increase the weight, increase the cost. So we do only what we need to get the job done. So I want to round out on the rump of the bird a little more while also cutting out for the hip joint. So we have good freedom of movement where those feet are going to go, or the leg bones, basically, our wires for the leg bones. So I'm going to go ahead and define the cutout. Then refine it. Get it looking clean, professional. And obviously, I mean, your first time, you don't have to do all this. I'm a stickler for a good looking body, so I I want them to look good and be functional, I guess. And at this point, I've pretty much got um, the body I want. I'm just going to go along and refine it, smoothing things out, adding some details that make absolutely no difference, but just make me feel good because then the body looks good. There's you don't need to do this unless you're just ADHD like me and like pretty things. So pretty much the rest of this is just refining the body. We're going to skip ahead a bit. Kind of refining shapes. Let's see, so I think we can skip most of the just adding on details. All right. So once you've gotten your body to where you're ready to test it out, you go ahead and you'll export as an STL. Find the folder that you want to put it in. And then name it and save it. And then at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and save the actual Blender file. So what we did when we exported was we were creating an STL, and an STL file is generally what you're going to work with whenever you're 3D printing things. But now I'm just going to save my Blender file. That way I always have it in case I want to make changes. I can always go back into it and make changes. So we'll exit out of that. And now what I've done is, let me talk about this program real quick. This program is called 3D Builder. You can just Google 3D Builder. It'll pop up. It's a great little program. It's super simple. Nothing fancy about it. Actually, it's almost too simple sometimes, but for what I use it for, it's perfect. A lot of times I'll take a raw scan that still has some holes and gaps and stuff. I'll import it in this program and it will auto repair it. And then I can go ahead and put it in Blender. But the big thing is that I use this to create all of my dimensions, any size editing I need to do, and also any stamping, embossing type work. So how I do my dimensions, my measurements, everything needs to be converted to millimeters. You can do inches if you want, but I found with any kind of 3D printing stuff, you just get a much more accurate measurement. And in the end of it, at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to deal with millimeters versus trying to do inches and fractions. So I just pull up an inch to millimeter conversion on Google, and then the second one I will pull up is circumference of an ellipse. So I'll pull these two up, and basically what I want to do here, so say I want to know my length, the length of my body. When I take measurements, it's 7.5 inches. So then I'll go my inch to millimeter conversion, type in 7.5, and it'll tell me exactly how long it needs to be. And then I can go into 3D Builder and into the length axis, just put in that number. And then for my circumference, what you do is you have height and width. Now you can use a caliper, a set of calipers to take these measurements off of the carcass, and that will help a lot. But you can also just take it from your circumference. You know, oh, it's 11.5, say. Yeah, my circumference on the body was 11.5. So you go in inch to millimeters, 11.5, it'll give you a number, which in this case was like 293, I think. So let me think. Yeah, 11.5 is 292. So I will play with these two values right here until I get to 93 as my total circumference. Basically what I'm doing is plugging in the radius of the height and the radius of the width, so half, not the whole thing, just half. And that will give me the values that I need for my height and my width. And one thing that I do want to point out here, how best to explain this. There is a ratio of height to width, and different birds are different. I've noticed that pheasants tend to have about a 20 millimeter difference between their height and their width. It doesn't matter how big or small they are, it seems to be about 20 millimeters. You can have a couple plus or minus, but it's going to be around that. Most ducks, when they are flying, are going to be somewhere between 6 and 10 millimeters different between your width and your height. And you're going to be wider than you are tall. Conversely, on a standing bird, you're typically going to be between 4 and 8 millimeters taller than it is wide. That just depends on the species and the size. You know, like teal obviously are going to have a slightly smaller difference, you know, maybe 4 millimeters or 6 millimeters, where bigger birds like mallards are probably going to be 8 to 10 millimeters difference. And that's just because they're bigger. I've noticed that divers tend to be a little bit wider. Even smaller ones, they tend to be a little bit wider than they are tall compared to a puddle duck. And conversely, they're almost really the same. Like their height and width is very close to equal. They might only have 4 millimeters difference between height and width when they're standing, whereas a mallard will still have a 10 millimeter difference, but it's when they're standing, their body's going to be taller than it is wide. So, and that's just something you kind of play with. You can play with it a bit. You take measurements of carcasses. If you can do it when the bird is still fresh, you go out on a hunt and you shoot a bird, and maybe like as soon as you can, you pluck it as best you can, at least in the area that you need to take measurements, and then you can put a set of calipers on it. Or there's certain types of calipers you don't even need to pluck it. But that's the big thing. It's just before they lose all that blood pressure, you can take measurements and whatnot, and you'll start forming kind of a baseline knowledge for the differences in the height to width ratios. So anyway, basically that's how I do all the measurements for my bodies. It's just using inch to millimeter and circumference of an ellipse to do all the math for me to figure out how big a body needs to be. So what's nice about this is, now that I have this form and I've made a base form of it, I can just pull that base form up every time, do my little calculations based on the carcass that I just did or just measured. And if it's a measurement where I don't have that measurement, I just come in here real quick. Takes about 5 minutes. I can change my measurements, and then I can send it to the printer. So here you're going to see me doing some embossing. Pretty much I like to put the actual measurements of the form into the top. So I'll type those in, try to line that up, make it the size I want. And this way I'm never confused about what size a particular body is, because I do try to keep a few extras on hand in case I end up having an issue with my printer, which thank goodness I really haven't had any issues with. But occasionally you might have a small issue, or maybe you just forgot to print a body, or you printed the wrong size, and so I like to keep a few on hand. It's really nice to just be able to reach in the box and look through and find the measurement I need rather than having to guess. And of course, this is just some stuff that I do. It's like a product number basically that will also allow me to know what species, what it is exactly. And then I like to put my logo on my bodies. Now my logo, it's an SVG file which I created using another open source program called Inkscape, which converts pictures and stuff into vector files. So you can import that vector file, come right out, and then you can just emboss it on pretty much anything, which is really nice. But that's pretty much it. I mean, we're how far are we into this? 53 minutes, and now I've got a body ready to print. So, and yeah, it doesn't take me as long because I've been doing this for a while now. But I'll be honest, with bodies, it's really not that difficult. Once you play around with it a little bit, you'll get the hang of it. It doesn't take long, especially with bodies. I mean, I didn't, when I first got into this, I didn't have any YouTube videos. I didn't really watch any YouTube videos. I just, I did a scan and just started playing with it and kind of figuring the program out. So it was very basic at first, and played with it a little more until I finally kind of got a hang on it, which, to be honest, didn't take long. Once you realize you're basically sculpting with clay, but in a digital medium instead of a physical medium, it starts to get a lot more simple to understand. So I've made my form, I've saved it again as a new STL, and now I'm importing it into my my printing software, which is also free. Like I said, the only thing I've paid for all of this is my scanner and my printers, which, while we're on the subject, so I recommend Bamboo Labs for filament printers, which is really all you need for a body. You can use some of their more beginner type printers like the A1. A lot of people use the A1. It's pretty popular. I've heard A lot of people even using them in print farms because it's all they need. Um, I specifically use a P1S, which is a solid printer. What I really like about it is that it comes with an enclosure, it comes with an automatic material system, so I can have up to 4 rolls in there at once. I'm not having to manually change rolls every time a roll runs out, and then I have a print just stopped halfway through in the middle of the night and I wake up, my print's not finished. None of that. The AMS handles all that. It's enclosed, so a lot of the sound is deadened, so it's not loud in my shop. It keeps the dust off of the printer. It's really nice. The P1S is considered a real workhorse machine. It's reliable. It's very fairly valued. I think right now they're on sale for like, I think they're like $550 with the AMS1. I think you can get them for like $620 with the AMS2. And I would recommend the AMS2 over the AMS1 because it's got a filament dryer built into it, which for PLA you don't really need to worry about. But if you start getting into some of the other filaments like PETG and ABS and stuff, if you're doing like artificial limbs and bases, you'd want to use a sturdier material. And especially if you live in a humid area like me, you definitely want to have that filament dryer to be able to suck that humidity out before you print. They did just release the P2S, which is it's a P1S with some quality of life upgrades. I think it's just hit the market at $800, and that comes with the AMS2. Either machine is going to be good. A lot of times, especially with the P2S coming out or having just released, you can probably get on Facebook and find a pretty decent P1S at a fairly discounted price right now from people that are just wanting to upgrade for no reason other than to have the newest shiny thing. But I use just basic PLA. I get it in bulk from Bamboo Labs for $13.99 per refill. I don't get a roll, like with a spool. I get refills because the machine comes with 3 spools. You just buy one more spool that fills up your AMS, and then you just refill the spools for $13 a roll rather than paying $20 to $25 for at regular price. Because Bamboo Labs actually does allow you to buy in bulk. So if you're buying 15, 20 rolls at once, you get a pretty solid discount. I think the refills are standard price at 20, and you can get them essentially for 14. Matter of fact, I just stocked up on like 50 rolls because for Black Friday they had them on sale for $10 a roll. And you can get anywhere from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bodies out of a roll. If you notice right up in the right hand corner, you have a little box here, slicing results, and it will tell you exactly how much filament is used. So in this one, it's 164.27 grams. Rolls come as a 1 kilogram roll or 1,000 grams. And 164 grams, you can probably get 7, maybe 8 pheasant bodies out of one roll. So you get 7 or 8 bodies for $14. And you can see right there, right under the filament cost, you can see the cost or the amount of filament used. You can see the cost. Now, I have this plugged in at for $14 a roll, so it's calculating out based on that. One pheasant body costs $2.30. It will take 2 hours and 17 minutes to print. You can print them faster. You have faster settings. You can increase your speed. You can increase your volumetric speed, and you can even on top of that, you can increase the speed on the printer. You just be aware that the faster you print, the more wear and tear you get on the machine. So I like to keep it at a reasonable speed so that if I skin a bird out and I take measurements, I can walk over to my computer, select the body I need, hit print, and then by the time I'm done fleshing it, washing it, painting the head, carving the neck, blow drying the bird, and getting everything ready, that body will be done, ready for me to pull off and stick in the bird by the time I'm ready. So basically, I want it fast enough that I'm not waiting on it, but not so fast that it's just like done way before me. That way, I increase the life of the parts of my printer as best I can while maintaining a good work schedule. I know I'm kind of bounced back and forth on this. I'm sorry, this is just the first time I've ever done a video. I'm going to try to get to the point where I'm starting to do some live stream stuff where I'm actually working on the file as I'm talking about it. And then maybe we'll start live streaming some stuff so that people can ask questions while I'm in the middle of doing it. I plan on doing a lot more of this stuff and showing how I do some of this stuff because it's really interesting, and I think it can really help a lot of people out. And I know a lot of people ask, like, how could this possibly be better? There's all this stuff you have to learn. Like, look, trust me, I get it. I have had those thoughts myself. But when I finally just said, it's too intriguing. I need to know. And I sat down, and every time I sat down and tried to learn something new, I realized this was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. It just seems like it's hard because you don't really understand much about it. But there's tons of introductory stuff out there on YouTube, how to use printers, how to use Blender and whatnot. And then of course I'm starting to make these series to try to help people out for taxidermy specifically. So if you want to see more of this stuff, please subscribe to this channel, like the video, share it if you can on Facebook and whatnot. Get it out there so other people that that might be interested can see it, because I do want to continue this. I want to keep doing more of this because I really think that this could help a lot of people with a new avenue on how to be self-sufficient in the taxidermy industry. Anyway, thank y'all guys, and I'll see you next time.